So, hi everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Mina Cabrion. I am the Training and Technical Assistance Coordinator here at Amity Foundation, who is acting as the third-party administrator for these JCOD webinars. So today we are going to be talking about creating and developing policies and procedures. So policies and procedures are essential components of any organization. They serve as a framework for decision-making and providing guidance for employees on how to perform their duties effectively. This resource aims to break down the key concepts discussed in, manuals, onboarding guides, basically anything when you really start a job, right? You want to really highlight policies, procedures by highlighting the importance and outlining the steps to create outlining the steps for your employees in something such as like a manual or an employee handbook. Policies and procedures are definitely vital for smooth functioning of any organization. And by following outlined steps on knowing how to create these policies and procedures, you can definitely ensure clarity, consistency, and of course, compliance, ultimately leading to a more efficient and effective workplace. So we will first get started, of course, with our centering community land acknowledgements. So again, thank you so much for joining. This webinar is presented by Amity Foundation, acting as the third-party administrator for LA County's Justice, Care, and Opportunities Department and the CFCI Care Grants. The CFCI Care First Community Investment Grants are the result of Ballot Measure J, voted in by LA County residents in 2020. Care First Community Investment Funds are intended to be invested directly into communities and alternatives to incarceration that address negative outcomes caused by racially driven criminal legal system inequalities and long-term economic disinvestments. Today's webinar is being recorded. You do not have to be on camera. Understand that if you are on camera, your image may be captured in the recording, and staying on the webinar represents your consent to being recorded. So at Amity, we incorporate teachings that center the community before we begin our work. Today, we will use the LA County Land Acknowledgement to recognize the price paid by individuals that has resulted in efforts such as the Care First Community Investment. We recognize that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tonva, Tataviam, Serrano, Quiche, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants. We acknowledge that settler colonization resulted in the genocide of the First Peoples. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. So before we start into our presentation, I just want to remind everyone that we actually are going to do something different moving forward with the attendance. So we won't be doing our names and organizations in the chat anymore. So if you have noticed or not, the chat isn't available. At the end of every single presentation, there will be a QR code. Our ask is that you scan that QR code and take 2 minutes to complete a quick 15-minute survey that will help us better do these presentations for you in the future. So let's get started. So what is a policy? So a policy is a formal statement that outlines the rules and guidelines that govern an organization's operations. Policies are typically created to establish standards of behavior and performance, provide a framework for decision-making, ensure compliance with laws and regulations, and to protect an organization from legal issues. There are different types of policies, And the four primary types of policy are public policy, organizational policy, functional policy, and specific policy. So I'm going to break down every single policy. An organizational policy, an example can be a corporation may have an organizational policy that outlines employee conduct, including dress code, attendance, workplace behavior. This policy is essential in or for maintaining a professional environment. So the organizational policy really refers to the internal rules and guidelines that govern the operations of any organization. These policies definitely help manage daily activities and ensure compliance with legal and ethical standards. A functional policy is more of like a joint venture between, let's say, a tech company and a research institution. A functional policy may be established to define the sharing of resources, intellectual property rights, and project timelines. A functional policy are often created when two or more organizations collaborate on a specific project. These policies outline the roles, responsibilities, the procedures that each organization must follow in order to achieve common goals. A specific policy, so for instance, during the pandemic, many organizations implemented specific policies in order to manage remote work, health protocols, and employee safety. Once the pandemic started to subside, these policies were no longer necessary for a lot of organizations. So a specific policy are more temporary and designed to address a particular situation or challenge. They are often enacted for a limited duration and may be dissolved once the issue is resolved. So examples again of a policy could be a dress code policy. So you want to ensure that your employees come in appropriate attire for your organization, whether that's business casual or, um, just fully like uniform in order to maintain a professional image. You can also do policies such as like data protection, which, you could outline how an organization collects, uses, and protects personal data to comply with your privacy laws. So when we think about policies, we really have to think of them like guidelines that define how every employee should act and how they should make decisions. It involves staying consistent, following the organization's rules and regulations, and staying true to our goals. These policies can highlight several issues, such as including like employee behavior, how crucial data should be handled securely, how finances should be managed, and more. You want to set up policies in order to make them serve as guiding lights for all of your employees so that they know what is expected of them. It also can help to create a friendly work environment. They can help manage risks and legal stuff. So really definitely keeping everything in check. You can definitely put all of these policies in one location. You want all of your employees to be on the same page. And so let's talk about now a procedure. So a procedure is more of a series of steps or instructions that detail how to implement a policy. A procedure can provide clarity on the actions required to achieve objectives set forth by a policy. So when I think of a policy, when I think of a procedure, I think of it as a step-by-step instruction and actions designed to achieve a specific task or goal. It can outline the sequence of actions to be taken, specifying who should perform them and when. They can ensure tasks are carried out efficiently, consistently, and safely. For instance, a simple procedure for handling customer inquiries via email can be, that you check the company email for inquiries, you take note of any specific details mentioned in the email, you analyze the inquiry and gather necessary information if needed, you draft a clear and polite response addressing the customer's query, you review and respond to ensure that it is professional, concise, and free of any errors. And then you, of course, send the reply to the customer's email within, 24 or 48 hours. Oftentimes when we think of a procedure, we usually can present them in a standard of procedure and SOP document to really guide your team. And SOPs, or standard operating procedures, are really detailed documents that provide specific instructions to complete routine operations. You always want to have one prepared for someone who is starting off in a new job so that they know what is really expected of them. While procedures are broader and can encompass various organizational tasks, SOPs are typically more specific, focusing on, processes and procedures within a particular department or for a specific activity. So the importance of policies and procedures. So I always recommend that a manual is crucial for several reasons. You definitely want to have clarity. You want to clearly define the policies and the procedures in your organization in order to eliminate any type of ambiguity, ensuring that all employees understand their responsibilities and the expectations placed upon them. You want to have consistency. Policies and procedures promote uniformity in decision-making and actions across the organization, which is vital for maintaining fairness and accountability. Risk management. Well-crafted policies can mitigate risks associated with legal liabilities, employee misconduct, and operational inefficiencies. And of course, your organizational growth. As your organization grows and expands, a manual facilitates smoother transitions and helps maintain organizational culture and values. So, steps to develop your policies and procedures. You first want to identify the need. You want to determine whether a policy is necessary and what type of policy is required. So this can involve assessing the current situation and understanding the issues that need to be addressed. Assess the organization's operations to determine areas requiring policies and procedures such as business activities, employee roles and responsibilities, your compliance requirements. You also want to define responsibilities. Who is meant to take lead in drafting the policy? Is it a person? Is it a team? Who has the relevant expertise and authority within your organization in order to make these policies? Clearly outline who is responsible for implementing and overseeing each policy and procedure. Is it, your manager? Is it a human resources? Is it a supervisor, an employee? Collecting both primary and secondary data can definitely help to, lay out all of the groundwork. Then you want to, of course, draft a policy. So by creating and drafting a policy based on the gathered information, you again want to be clear, concise, and aligned with your organization's goals. You want to write the policy using clear and concise language. You want to avoid jargon and ensure that the policy is easily understandable by all of your employees. Of course, whenever creating something, you want to review it. So share the draft with anyone who is involved, such as your management team, such as your human resources team, or your overall employee pool base. You want them to review it so that you can ensure that it's comprehensive and compliant with, what they're doing in everyday work duties. You also, of course, want to consult any type of legal expert to ensure that the policy complies with, your applicable state laws and regulations. You never want to, of course, get into legal issues. So consulting a legal expert is always useful. You of course then want to approve the policy. You want to implement the procedure. So definitely submit the finalized draft to the powers that be. And once approved, you can implement the policy or procedure. Once it's finalized, you would be able to train if needed. And then you want to, of course, monitor and revise it. So just because you were able to finalize and pass a policy or procedure, it doesn't always mean that it's completely 100% correct. You want to ensure that all employees are aware and understand the policy and the procedure. Some may require additional, you know, revisions in order for it to be an effective implementation. Some policies need regular reviews so that you can see if there's something that is missing, where you can then make updates as necessary in order to adapt and tweak whatever policy or procedure that you have implemented. So some examples of policies that a lot of organizations already have in place. A conflict of interest policy. So a conflict of interest policy strictly outlines how to handle situations where an individual's personal interests may conflict with the interests of the organization. This policy is definitely crucial for maintaining transparency and integrity. So, a well-written conflict of interest policy lays out expectations for conduct by and between employees and clients or partnering agencies. It spells out specific procedures to follow should a conflict arise, including how those with a conflict are to give notice to others that such a conflict exists. So, for example, if your nonprofit is potentially going to do business with a company partially owned by your executive director, what's the procedure for dealing with that conflict? Another policy that you can have is a whistleblower policy. So a whistleblower policy is related in some ways to your conflict of interest policy. Ideally, your organization is conducting its activities the right way. So a whistleblower policy can sit in a file and never have to be used. However, this policy is designed to instruct and protect those with the knowledge of wrongdoing. So, for example, let's say a staff member becomes aware that one of the employees that has bank account access is writing checks to themselves for expense reimbursements. So this can go against your policies of your organization. And the whistleblower policy would be able to or should describe how the staff member should address the issue to leadership, as well as protect them from any retaliation for having exposed the practice. Records, retention, and destruction. So this one is important in regards to like client, faculty, students, records. So definitely part of being transparent and accountable is the records retention. At a bare minimum, a nonprofit should be keeping records for at least 3 years. Financial records should be kept at least for 7 years. In some cases, it should be substantially longer. If it wasn't required by law, it should be logical that important data is retained. Federal and state law makes records retention a requirement for those seeking grant funding. So, for instance, for this grant, you do need to keep all of your receipts because you will get audited at a certain point in time. So definitely keeping all of those records is really, really important. One question that often comes up is whether original paper must be retained. And of course, you should always keep an original copy of everything. If you have a way to digitalize documents, amazing. However, what if something were to happen to your computer? What if something were to happen to, where you store everything? You want to make sure that the paper copy is always very tangible and available to grab in case something does happen to that digital copy. Um, just to touch on the destruction part, the destruction part of your policy should definitely outline specifically how your nonprofit must go about disposing of any records once the retention record keeping period has lapsed. So what do you do in order to get rid of all the physical paperwork? Do you shred it? Do you burn it? What do you do with it, right? Digital data, of course, should be permanently deleted. That doesn't always mean just moving a file into your trash can and then clearing out the trash can. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's permanent deleted. It can still live somewhere within your computer. So definitely keep in mind that you can keep everything forever, but just knowing how to go about those things. So a physical management policy. So financial management and control is one of the most critical responsibilities of any nonprofit organization. It is absolutely essential that there are tight controls on cash flow and the transparency that naturally should come with that. So definitely your finance team, your whoever handles your books, they should know the policy that comes with it. How is your money handled from, a grant, from what's it called, from banks, from gifts, from expenditures? Who can make deposits? Who can spend money? How many signatories do you have on a bank account? How many credit cards can your organization open? Can items be spent without approval of, let's say, your CEO or your CFO? Or is there someone else that makes cash approvals? How many signatures are on a disbursement check? Can the same person write checks and reconcile the books? Is only one person on a bank account? So for a lot of these things, the answer should be no. Definitely, you should have multiple people in a bank account. Hiring a good bookkeeper is always really important. An accountant, someone who can really help you through the money. We can know we can never stress enough how important financial controls are. Not only does it provide the necessary guardrails to protect and steward your organization's limited resources, it also protects every person involved from accusations, assuming proper separation of duties. And lastly, it definitely provides your members and or donors a great deal of confidence that their support is managed properly. So intellectual property policy. So when you have someone create things for your organization, who owns it? So the logo, the documents, the software. You definitely want to have a policy in regards to this, where, is it ownership rights, usage permissions? Have those conversations with your staff. Noteworthy policies, employee compensations, gift acceptances. So employee compensation policies, you definitely want to provide this so that it's consistent across the board with all of your employees. The salaries, the wages, the benefits. Some nonprofits have a policy that only deals with executive compensation, but it's better to address how everyone gets paid. Um, And then for gift acceptance policies, if someone is wanting to give your nonprofit a donation, do you just take it? A gift acceptance policy may deal with gifts of money, but more typically it's to address in-kind gifts. So in-kind gifts are non-cash gifts such as, clothing, tickets to a concert or a game, wine, the acceptance of which might be amazing, like they want to thank you, yay. But it honestly could be more of a hassle than they're worth. Sometimes there are legal ramifications to accepting in-kind gifts, such as taxes or licensing. So it's definitely important to think about creating a gift acceptance policy. And a lot of these policies are actually asked about in your IRS Form 990. So definitely see which ones are addressed in there. So 5 questions to answer before writing a procedure. So 5 questions to ask yourself. Do I really need a procedure for this process? So procedures will help you accomplish all of your company's processes. The procedure might be redundant if the process is routine, uncomplicated, and easily remembered. However, you must create a procedure if your process is going to be complex, if it's critical to safety. For instance, if the process requires, compliance, it might be necessary to create procedures to avoid missing necessary steps. Another question you might want to ask yourself is, what is the purpose of this procedure and what do you want to achieve? So determine the specific objective. Is it for training? Is it for compliance? Is it for safety, process consistency? Understanding the purpose guides the procedure structure and content. For instance, statistics show that employees tend to waste more than 21 days annually doing repetitive tasks that could easily be automated. So defining the purpose keeps a procedure focused on its intended function. Another question to ask yourself is writing the best format for this procedure? So consider the nature and the task of the audience, of your employees. While writing procedures are versatile, certain tasks might benefit from other formats. For instance, videos and interactive guides could be more effective for hands-on processes because they provide visual clarity. You might also want to have both because a lot of individuals are visual learners. On the other hand, complex workflows might be better suited for flowcharts. Evaluating the task's complexity and the audience's learning preferences ensures that the chosen format aligns with the procedure's goals. Is there an existing template to take a cue from? Oftentimes we can't think of where to start, so we just start from scratch before exploring if there's already a template in place for a procedure. So definitely by looking at what is already there and what's already in writing, it can save time and effort by offering a reliable starting point. You can definitely tailor things and just edit a little bit and make it work for something else. The final question to ask yourself is, do I have all the information I need to write this procedure? So thoroughly assess whether you have all of the company details before you start creating. You can gather information from your staff, from your experts, and other leaders that make the process comprehensive. So your volunteers, your students, your clients that go to your organization. Insufficient information can lead to vague or inaccurate instructions. So it's really important that you check that you have added all of the safety protocols, the tools, the steps. This is really the only way to ensure that the procedure is thorough, accurate, and beneficial to everyone involved. So again, what to do after writing a procedure, you want to make sure that it's good. So you want to ask for feedback. You want to see, do I need to update it? You want to measure the success of your procedure. So apart from the feedback, you also need to evaluate the procedure's effectiveness. Define clear metrics such as a task completion time, error reduction, or user satisfaction surveys, and analyze them regularly in order to gauge the procedure's impact. So, for example, in an onboarding process, your indicators of success can be reduced training time, increase the new employee confidence. Measuring these outcomes allows you to identify strengths and areas for enhancement within an onboarding guide. A procedure example can be, again, that customer inquiry. How do you handle calls or inquiries from individuals calling your organization? So the introduction can be that, your procedure outlines the approach to handle inquiries coming over the phone. Once your front desk manager or one of your case managers handles it, what steps should they follow? Do they automatically call the individual? Do they send them an email? What do they do? So you can definitely do a step-by-step procedure, such as like, they get an inquiry, they have 48 hours to return that inquiry. They call them, they say who they are, they listen to what is needed. They can ask additional questions if necessary. They can address any concerns politely. They can summarize the solution offered or confirm that the customer or potential client is satisfied. They want to encourage them to reach out again if they have more questions or if they're going to come in to the location. You want to have them record essential details, basically. And if necessary, initiate follow-up measures, ensuring that the individual's issue is resolved. And then, of course, you want them to thank them, express gratitude, and wish them a pleasant day. So benefits of a well-written procedure in an organization. So there's definitely a lot of pros and cons, more pros than cons, of course. Your company can definitely benefit significantly by adopting the right procedure writing tools, by also implementing the correct policies. You can have easier and faster employee onboarding and training. According to local statistics, 21% of 21% of employers reported the onboarding process in their companies can take about a month. However, some can take longer due to poorer procedures. And the last thing you want is to onboard someone who feels that your onboarding process is not right. They feel, you just spent 4 weeks onboarding them and they feel like they have learned nothing at those 4 weeks and they resign and you have to go back to step one and rehire and go through the whole process again. So when your company has well-written procedures in place, employees can grasp the essential tasks much easier. You want to have step-by-step instructions so that you can reduce the learning curves because the information is well explained. You don't have to spend so much time in follow-up trainings because that initial training was conducted so well. So again, an ideal documented onboarding process or procedure might include setting up, your email accounts, accessing internal databases, understanding the communication protocols, learning the history of your organization. New employees can integrate into the organization faster when all of those details are readily available. It's a good benefit of a well-written procedure is also that it improves employee efficiency. confusion in the workplace can lead to financial losses, but with structured procedures and well-drafted policies, employees know what they need to do. The errors are minimized, um, and you know, they get grounded into their position a lot quicker. For example, in a sales procedure, a clearly defined process for handling customer inquiries and sales representatives respond promptly. Definitely going into the increasing customer satisfaction and potentially boosting sales, right? So you want to invest in your procedures. Um, Another benefit is that you ensure consistency across the organization. So when one person is using the same onboarding tool or the same procedure for every single employee, it ensures you that there's consistency across the board. A uniform approach, whether it's customer service protocols, financial reporting, or development procedures, um, everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing. Um, well-written procedures also minimizes risks and mistakes. You want to always minimize risks and errors by clearly outlining the correct methods and best practices within your organization. So that is the end of our presentation. This really just is the start of a policy or drafting a procedure. There's definitely a bunch more policies that I didn't go over, and we could really get into SOPs a lot deeper, such as, you can add more policies such as like confidentiality, traveling. So it's easy to think of policies and procedures as just one more hoop you have to jump through, or another document to prepare, then file away and forget. However, good policies and procedures really are a critically important part of operating a successful nonprofit. As my father-in-law always used to say, expect the unexpected. Be prepared by having a solid set of operating policies that will always protect your organization, its people, and its resources. So here is the QR code that I had talked about at the beginning of our presentation. So if you joined late, we are doing attendance a little bit differently. Oh, let me actually stop the recording.